Okay, so here's a quick review of what we did last time. We've started a map and it was a blank map, but we added 2 layers so far. One of them was this DEM and we symbolized it, so I'll review that in a sec. But the first one was a web map service from the county, from San Juan County, New Mexico, and we pulled in some imagery that they had. So I'm going to go ahead and review that real quick. So we used the county's website here, and we use this one. So sjcounty.net, right? And government geographic info systems. And we scrolled down to this WMS service. And well, you can pop any of these into you can do all of them if you want. But we used the first one and just, we copied that link address to use in if I insert a connection, a WMS, Web Map Service connection, paste that link, click OK, and what ends up happening is in your catalog, there's actually 2 places where, well, actually just one. Actually, there's 2. I think if you go to folders, no. Sometimes it pops up in different places. Anyway, we now have a server listed, not WMS server, and then we drag that in, and we have 4-inch imagery covering much of the populated areas of the county anyway. You zoom out, you can see that it doesn't go over the non-populated-ish areas, so not that there aren't people that live there, there's plenty. For some reason, it doesn't want to cover Aztec, that's weird. So anyway, if you want Aztec coverage, you would go to the 2019 imagery, and it's pretty good too, it's just not as current. Maybe Aztec just doesn't change every 2 years. Just kidding. I don't know. Okay. And then we went to UNM's ArcGIS site, or the Resource Geographic Information Systems. So it's a clearinghouse, if you will, of data. And so we searched for elevation and terrain data, and we looked at enhanced 10-meter DEM. So what that means is, so our imagery was using 4-inch pixels, right? So 1 pixel covered 4 inches on the ground. That kind of gives you an idea of the scale of it. These give you 10 meters on the ground. So each pixel is 10 meters. So it's a whole lot smaller in file size and less coverage too. So those files are quite a bit smaller. So we just clicked on DEM here, and we did a search for Farmington. Waited for it, and there's 2, and they're stacked on top of each other. So there's a north and a south. And if you want the ones next to it, there's an index that we could find where it names all the topo names around, so you could find out which names for the area you want are available. So, but we didn't go that far. We just downloaded one of them and opened it up in ArcGIS, and that's what that guy is. At first, it comes in, so if I select it and go to Appearance and change its symbology, I can just change its color scheme. And so we use this elevation-esque one, but it comes in as a black and white grayscale. So the darker colors are the lower values, and so we can see in the table of contents that it ranges from 1600-ish to almost 1900 meters. And how do I know they're meters? Well, we can look at the properties of it. I think it's useful to look at raster properties. So if we look at that, we can go to source and maybe spatial reference. Well, actually, under the data source, it does give you the vertical units, and that's the elevation values of each pixel, and those are in meters. So there you go. All righty. Okay. Let's see if, let's add the other one too. And what I mean by that is in chapter 2 folder here, I have I want to compare the F2 TIFF with the F2 DEM and see what kind of difference we get here. And no, I don't want to build the pyramids. We talked about what pyramids were too, right? Anybody remember what pyramids are? Yeah. Well, I thought those were only in Egypt. Image pyramids are just multiple copies of the same image at different resolutions, right? A resolution is just how big the pixels are, really, right? So the full pixel size would be 10 meters, right? So if I wanted to zoom out and see a lower res image of it, maybe they would be 40-meter pixels or something like that, right? And so I would see, and it would load up that image rather than the high resolution one, so it would redraw faster. So with 10-meter pixels and a small image coverage like this, probably don't need pyramids, right? But for like the county, that would be pretty nice. And if you use Google Earth, you'll see the image change, and even the color will change, and you can see it change pretty easily. Anyway, maybe we'll look at that. So anyway, no is the answer there. That's the long answer. That. There you go. Okay, so I don't see much difference here, right? How about its properties? I think one of the things we could do, it doesn't even say how big it is. I thought it was going to show the size of each image, but in any case. And we'll talk about spatial reference coordinate systems in the next chapter, but right now.
Show the size of the connection to that source.
No. I mean, you could look in maybe the catalog and maybe its properties in the catalog, which is going to be a little different. Oh yeah, maybe we could. I have high hopes of seeing the size here. There it is. There it is. Folder raster information, rows and columns, right? So 1117, 71, and each pixel, right? Each row and column is 10 meters. So that's what 11,710 meters across. That's 11 kilometers. Is that right? Yeah, that's about right. If you look at what it covers, it's all across Farmington, so that's about right. Anyhow, so columns are up and down things, so that measures, I mean, if you want to see how far that is, that would be left to right or east west and so forth. Okay, and then keep it on, there we go, uncompressed size 6.39 megabytes. And that's the TIFF. Let's see what the DEM says. Need to be F2. Actually, I have, yeah. .3. Storing a little bit differently can make, well, that's about double the file size. We won't go into how a DEM does it and how a TIFF does it. Actually, a TIFF can store it in a variety of methods too, so we don't have to go into that a little bit further. Anyway, we'll talk about those later. Symbology wise, let's just take out one of them. Matter so much. I'll remove that one and select that one. Go to its symbology finally and put it back to some nice coloring. That's not so nice. So if I don't know, let's check show names. So I can see some elevation ones. Oh, there's quite a few. Kind of like the blue for the waterish or the low elevations. So not that blue. Yeah. Okay, I'll just stick with that. That looks sort of deserty. Let's go. All right. Since that is a river, maybe I will want to pick some. I'll just leave it like that. All right, any questions any up to here? Okay, so in the chapter 2 folder, there is a FMTN Parks shapefile. So I don't want to edit a shapefile this time. I want to edit the geodatabase. So in my my data models geodatabase, I have a couple other ones just from old stuff, but my data models geodatabase has nothing in it. And so what I want to do is import that shapefile into my geodatabase, and it'll actually convert it to what's called a geodatabase feature class, right? And we talked about the names of it, and they get stored differently on the computer, and they have slightly different functionality. Well, quite a bit. There's more, but so I'm going to right click on that and import feature class or feature classes, like if I had multiples, right? So just one, so feature class. So the input features are the parks, right? So I'm going to browse for that. And if I go to my chapter 2, not my chapter 2, but the class data chapter 2 folder, got to dig through it a little bit. 115, class data, chapter 2, FMTN Parks, and okay. So here's the name of it down here, and okay. And what are we going to name it? I don't know. Let's try FMTN Parks. How about that? Okay. Yeah, and I'm just going to run it. I'm not going to mention this output coordinate system, which we'll talk about next time. But let's just run it, and it'll pick up the coordinate system of the shape file itself. So it has an internal coordinates that'll work, but we should be fine. So we get here. Okay, so maybe I want to turn off the DEM real quick so I can see the parks around. Are these all the parks? I don't know what these big ones are. Is that a, well, that's the golf course. Oh, this is Brooks, what do you call it? Berg Park. Nice, nice. That's pretty good.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do, let's get to this point. Yeah, I'd like to get to this point. Let me pause the recording this time. Maybe I can not stop it, but pause it. All right, so we've made a list, and Tibbets, right? So Tibbets is on Apache all the way across to Butler almost, I think. Yeah, right here, right? So I was using the world topo map to kind of identify the parks that were there but not drawn. But now here's one that's not drawn that's there, and I want to use the imagery to do that. So I'm going to turn on the imagery. Wait for it. And luckily it's 2021 data, so we should have a good idea of what's there and what isn't. So this is where the old Tibbets was, but the parky area is probably just, I would draw it around the field. Well, maybe just around the border, right? Okay, wait for that to redraw. So this is how you start editing or drawing on that layer, right? So we have, remember, we could potentially have like roads and building footprints and other layers, right? So when you start drawing, you got to know which one you're using, like which one you're actually adding data to or taking data away or modifying your data, right? So just pay attention to, well, actually, it does it pretty well for you. So I'm going to go to the edit ribbon. Yeah. And we can modify or create. Those are the two main things. We could select data, and there's other things. There's lots of other things that we can do. We're just going to create right now. So click on create, and then the panel on the right changes to the Create Features panel, which seems pretty bland, but it does show you the list of layers. In our case, there's only one layer that's editable, really. You can't really draw on the pixels of the DEM or the web map service. They don't let you do that. It's not a two-way street here. They just let you see it, right? And that's all we need. So I click on the Farmington Parks. That's the one we want to edit. So that's the one we are. And then it gives you a list of tools you can use to do the editing. The first tool is the Polygon Tool. That's just where you click, 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 and it draws an area. Okay. There's some other good ones, and we'll get to those. So I'm just gonna, there it is. And so now your cursor is a little bit different in your screen. So I'm gonna pick, I don't know, any corner. Yeah, I'm gonna pick on the lower. So I'm gonna zoom in here. I think the park starts at this curb. And I'm gonna click there. And I'll just pan across. And I'll just find place. So here's a good corner there. Doesn't have to be super accurate or anything. Just within 4 inches, and we'll be fine. Just kidding. All right. Oh yeah. So this is good. It goes around this fence. I can see the shadow of the fence anyway. And I'm going to start where it begins an arc. See, it's rounded here, and I don't want to just draw a bunch of little straight lines. We can draw arcs. So I'm just going to click where I think the arc kind of begins, maybe right there. And then I'm going to look down here at my drawing. There's some other, I don't know what the difference is here. So I'm in the Polygon tool, I guess. And then here are some sub tools, I guess, or methods to draw polygons, I guess. And so I'm going to go to the arc section, and this one is a tangent curve. So this allows me to draw arcs that are tangent, smooth, basically smooth curves from the lines I've drawn. So that's the one I want. So I'm going to pick that. And so now you notice wherever you put your cursor, it gives you that dashed line where there's a nice arc. And so I'm just going to look at where it fits nicely, and I'll just click and click where it kind of ends. And then I don't want any more arcs, so I just go to the straight line tool or subtool, and then I'm on my way again, right? So it seems like maybe I started the arc a little soon, so I had to do 2 radii there. Anyhow, it's okay. Or maybe they just didn't build it right. Just kidding. Yeah, this comes to a corner up here. All right. So, sorry. Questions? Any questions? Okay. Nice long line here. So I want to go over how to finish it, right? So let's say this is just going to be. I click here. Now what do I do? Right? I could add more points to the polygon, but I'm done. Right? So there's a few ways to do that. You can click on that green checkbox down at the bottom, or you can right click and finish part. Notice a couple things, or just finish. I'm not finish part, but finish. And you could also square and finish. So before I clicked on that, I could have picked square it off, right, from where I clicked last to where it ends, and just square it and finish it. So I'm just going to do finish because I already clicked there. And what it does is it stops drawing that polygon and selects it. See how it's highlighted in cyan? That means it's selected. So if you hit the delete key or something, you could just take it away and it doesn't do it. So right now, it's called a sketch. The sketch is not committed to the file. You haven't changed the file yet. But if you click on save, not save project up at the very top, but in the edit ribbon, there's a save. This will actually write to the feature class. We'll actually add that polygon to the list of features in that feature class. That makes sense, sort of? So that's all about data, right? So anyway, I'm going to save it. Save it. Yes. Okay, thank you. You could, yes, you could right click it. What are two other ways? Two other ways. Right, well, right click and finish, right? Or check the box at the bottom, or
F2.
F2. Thank you. Nice. Very good. All righty. Let's try another one. Rickets. All right, we'll go to rickets. Isn't that a disease? First rickets. Rickets is right by the where's Rickets? Could be this. No, that's Farmington. Okay, so yeah, it's right here. Okay, so it looks like it's been updated, right? In fact, if I turn on the imagery, oh, I have the imagery. Let me just let it draw. And maybe I'll use the topo as my guide. Well, I don't know. It looks like Farmington, the city, had treated these two different fields as two different polygons, right? So maybe I want to do that again, right? So I might draw this top one, the practice fields. Is that what those are? And then the soccer fields as separate entities. So if I turn off the imagery, yeah, maybe I'll probably want to edit this, the existing polygons a little bit to include this other stuff. But I'm going to redraw, and I'll probably just, well, we'll do that. I don't want to draw each soccer field, but I'll just draw a box around the soccer field. So, okay, so I think I got a plan. So I'll turn the imagery back on and just draw a box around these fields first. I don't know. I don't think this bottom one's a field. It looks like somebody's backyard. So I don't want to mess with that. I'll go all the way to the street. Well, this is a better corner. And that's all parking lot. So I'm just going to go around it this way. There's another mode that you can use, like especially if you're drawing stuff that's real square. There's a right angles only, where everything you click is at a right angle to. So that's useful, especially with buildings and stuff. But anyway, I'm just going freehand here, freehand straight line. And I might want to just square and finish this one. So I'm going to right click, square and finish. And that's not so great. So let's say I'm cutting off this guy's house, so maybe I don't want to do that. Might get a notice from the neighbor. So with it selected, there's an option in the tools up in the ribbon where it says edit vertices. So that's what I want to do. So I'm going to click on edit vertices, and it pulls up, and you'll notice that the object, that last polygon I drew, that was selected, changed, and I can see the edges or the points, the corners that I had made. So now I can just click and drag on them. Maybe that should go up a little. And I'm thinking maybe it should stair step. I think there's a stair step in there. So I'm gonna hover over that bottom edge, right click, and add a vertex. And I'm going to add another one so I can make a step. And then if I hover over it, it turns into a little 4-arrow move tool. So now I can just kind of pitch that in like that, maybe. If I zoom in, it may look better. Actually, I'm just going to follow the fence. So with this one, I'm going to make a sharp edge here for a second. Yeah, maybe I'll do something like that. Just avoid this guy's yard. Yeah, maybe something like that, right? And then just click away from it to commit that. Okay, so I'm more happy with that, I guess. And so save, right? It's a good idea to, if you spent more than 5 minutes on something, maybe save it. All right. So now maybe I'll want to not use the imagery. And this will refresh a lot faster too. So this one, I can do the same thing, right? I can use my select tool. In the edit ribbon, there's a select tool, and I'll click on this bottom of the two original Ricketts Park polygons, and I'm going to edit those a little bit. There's two ways I want to do this. And one is by editing the vertices, which makes a fair amount of sense. So I could do that. But also, there's an area in between here that's part of the park area. So I can just click and drag on that edge and just move it down. Maybe snap it to the edge there. Something like that. So I just grab that edge and move it. Just click and drag. And that's with the Edit Vertices tool. And I think I could just move some of these vertices to their where they go. There's a curve here, it looks like. Doesn't quite match the road. So I'll grab some of these vertices until they run out. And I'll add my own. I think I have enough actually. Oops, those selected. Yeah, the more you zoom in, the more you realize how far off you are, but snap those vertices to the edge, make it look neat, even though it might be incorrect. So yeah, maybe I want to move them up there. And here's an extra vertex that I don't want, so I can right click it and delete vertex, and that straightens that line out. I'll leave that cavity in there. Those are actual like residences, so I think so. Let's try on the imagery and see. In fact, I looked at a townhouse there for rent. Oh, so that's part of it, right? Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Well, then the parking lot's covered. Yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it like that, I guess. Okay, click away. Click on this one. I'm still using the Edit Vertex tool, so I click on another polygon. I can edit those vertices. Well, that does cover the parking lot. I guess we're all right. I'll just leave that one. Well, except over here looks pretty bad. Oh no, it doesn't. The imagery says otherwise. I'm going to bring that back. I would trust the imagery to be a little more accurate than the topo, world topo. It's probably older data. Anyway. I'll see like that. I'll just draw this one. Now I'm guessing those are actually residences, so I'm not going to draw over those like the world topo did. So back to create. Click on the Polygon tool and yeah. Oh, good. I get to use my arc tool. I'll go all the way to this yard. We'll just follow the backyards. Except I'm not sure how that one works. That should go all the way across. I'll just skip that. Okay, tennis courts. F2. Okay. All right. So let's say I'm happy with that, and we'll give you time to finagle that around. Okay, so we want to add the names really to these parks, right? So I'm going to open up the attribute table, but you can also do it a few ways, right? You can edit straight in the attribute table. We've opened attribute tables before, but in the edit ribbon, there's an attributes panel that allows you to edit the attributes and the geometry at the same time. So let's look at that. So here, I have this thing that I just drew and it's selected, and that's what I'm seeing here. So right now I have like object ID, I don't know what that is, facility ID, maybe that's a city thing. The name, right? It's null, and I want to name it. So maybe I would call this is where you can put spaces, right? The spaces work and stuff in here. So let's say Ricketts tennis courts. Is that just tennis courts? Oh yeah. So how about Ricketts practice fields? Just hit enter, and well, okay, not just hit enter, but you have to click apply also. Yeah. So there it goes. It didn't save it, right? It applied it, but I need to click save if I want to actually keep that, right? So even if at this point, if ArcGIS crashes, then I only lose maybe that I added the parks to the map. But if I open it back up and add the parks back to the map, that park will be there because it's actually saved in the geodatabase rather than the map, right? Well, so I'm going to save the map too. Anyway, so there you go. Okay, so I drew some other stuff, right? Like this, the soccer field. So I'm going to use the select tool and click on that and name the soccer fields, right? So Ricketts Soccer. or football. Anyway, we'll just call it the American name. All right. What else did we drew? Oh, the Tibbets. So let's jump over there and give it its name. Find it. There's Apache and all that. There you go, right there. So I'm still on the select tool. Turn off the imagery for a minute so it'll refresh. Name. Tibbets with 1 T. Enter apply. Yeah, I can turn this off with the world topo doesn't know either. So, no, I guess I'm all right. Okay. So if we had other data, that'd be nice too, but we don't. There is a description field. So if we need to call it something and put a description in there, like edited, edit. Here's last update. So there's a field where you can put in the date where it was last updated. So for city work, that's pretty good field to have, right? Get it, field. Yeah. Field. Anyway, there we go. So the rest of this assignment, well, we're gonna finish editing these parks, right? We'll make it as good as we can for the next. Well, we have half an hour, so let's edit these parks for that time. We'll work on the parks we have listed and maybe find some other ones. And then we'll add some other data to build this map. So we still have some more things to talk about, but so far we're working with vector data, and that's a nice thing about it. You can select it, you can edit the vertices because it's just those points on which those arcs are connecting. And so it makes it easy to edit. We'll talk about raster data at another time, but so far so good. All right, so we'll continue. One thing I forgot to mention, so I did this Farmington Sports Complex, and I just realized that you can click on auto apply. So, and I think that's useful, especially when you're doing multiple, where you can type in the name, hit enter, and it automatically, so you don't have to click the apply button. So that saves you a click. You're welcome. So on Brookside Park, that's an interesting one because if I turn off the imagery, they drew it. I mean, it looks like it's not done well, and we have the Bistai Bay area that needs to be added to it. So instead of moving vertices around, there's another way to do this, and that's so I'm going to select it and pick the Reshape tool. The Reshape tool is pretty cool because it rhymes with cool. So let's say I want to take this vertex. So I'm just going to redraw this thing, although it really, I don't want to use I'm going to use the imagery to actually make the draw here. So, because it actually lines up with that better. So I'm going to start on this vertex once it's done redrawing. Okay. So I'm going to start on this vertex, and I am snapping. See the snapping button up in the ribbon? It is on, it's blue. And so that means when I get close enough to a vertex, it'll even label it and it'll snap to it. So I click on it, and that's the beginning of my polygon, right? So my reshape polygon, I should say. And I'll zoom in, and it has this nice arc here for the curb. Let's go right to the curb. Do a tangent arc, so it'll be real pretty. Go back here. And then I'm going to go right up to this vertex, right? There. And then I'm going to hit F2 or click on the green checkbox or whatever and finish it. And I'll zoom back out and see how it just added. And all those vertices that were inside just got wiped out, and it just reshaped that whole polygon to where I added to it. Pretty cool, huh? So I think I have some reshaping to do on the west side of this, where it dips down or whatever, and so now it doesn't need to for some reason. So I'm gonna redraw this one. Reshape this one once it's done redrawing. There we go. So I'm gonna click on this end. We're over here. And then just draw a couple lines, kind of straight across, and kind of chopping some things off here. Just right along the road edge. Just gonna keep going. Maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep going until it kind of matches the, I'm gonna keep following the road a little bit until I get to like here. I click and then F2 it, and then it just reshaped all that. That was a little extreme, but anyway, you get the idea. So that's the Reshape tool. That was a fun one. Similar to it is the Split tool. If we find a polygon we want to actually divide up, we can use the Split tool, but we'll get to that. Okay, so we found this area and we think it should go down here, which makes sense. So I'm going to click on modify with that selected, and I'll use move. You could rotate and scale and do some stuff. The center, if you hold the control key, you can actually drag the centroid of this thing, the centroid of the mechanism. You know what that movie's from? Treasure Planet. Anyway, well, we can just click and drag it into place. Yeah, it doesn't really match that well. I guess it kind of does. You may need to edit it too. Okay, and finish, and that'll move it. Easy enough, right? It's much more deliberate than, you know, a typical just click and drag it or whatever. You got to have the right tool to do that, so you don't accidentally do something you don't want to. I guess that's my justification for it. Anyway, maybe I want to edit some vertices here because it looks a little weird. And see how it gets a little transparent when you're doing that? I think I wanted a little more transparent, perhaps. So while I'm editing, I can go to the appearance and just up the transparency a little bit. So I can kind of see through it and see what I'm doing. All right. So I'm pretty sure those vertices need to go here along this edge. That does line up. I mean, it does have the same what you call it, same angle as that fence line, like Josh was saying. I'm going to delete these vertices. Vertices. Yeah, and maybe it goes to this corner. Yeah, I think you're right. That's totally it. Across there. Delete that guy. Delete. Yeah, I'll show you. I'm on a roll. Don't interrupt. Just kidding. All right, F2. So you can F2 there too. So there we reshaped it. So yeah, let's zoom out here, and I'm going to turn off the imagery so I can zoom. So here's Highway 64, and going down the road, this is down the hill, right? And then we get to Walmart and stuff right over here, right? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. There it is. And I want to check the attributes, make sure we're set it with the name and stuff. Wow, Vista de la Plata Park. So good, save it. All right, good call. Good one.